Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Artillery Fishing. So, as you can see, I am indoors today and also in a new house. If you were watching my other videos prior to this, then you would know that I made a major move. I went from Tacoma, Washington area, right there where the country meets the city pretty much, and I moved all the way down to Midwestern Louisiana, about 30 minutes from the Texas border. So that's where I'm at now. And if you also didn't know, yes, I am in the military, and that's why I made this giant major move. Today, I wanted to talk about how bass fishing is affected by the weather. I did lots of research on this topic over the years, and I've been bass fishing for a while now, most of my adult, teenage, younger life, ever since I was a kid. I've learned through experience, and I've also learned through a lot of reading. Surprisingly, the internet is full of amazing things that you can learn from other people. Today we're going to talk about how weather can affect bass fishing. Topic number one. Bass are fickle creatures. As most people know that have been bass fishing many times, one day you'll be out there and they'll be slamming everything you throw at them. And you go out there the next weekend and nothing is biting at all. And you're wondering, what the heck is up? What is different? Well, lots of things can happen, lots of things can change, but I guarantee you the weather, the seasons, they all play a big role. So number one thing is the weather affects their hunger. Depending on where the food is, where those bass are gonna be at. So that's why you notice during spring, early summer, fall, you can catch them a lot more shallower water, closer to shore. That's because where the food is. The frogs, the crawfish, the little fish, anything that the bass want to eat is moving up shallows, plus that water temperature change feels good. Remember, bass are cold-blooded creatures, so their metabolism, their body changes with the weather. As it gets warmer, they're going to burn more energy because they're cold-blooded. When it's colder, they're going to be using a lot less energy, so they don't need to eat as much. That's why it's a lot harder when you try to go fishing in the wintertime, wondering why nothing's really biting. I wonder why. That's when you got to start thinking about changing up your presentation, and honestly, it all just depends on if that fish is eaten already that day. Have they not? You never know. If they have, that might be the one meal that's going to keep them going for the next day or two. I just want to reiterate though, it does not mean you cannot catch them in the colder months. I've had lots of great times out in the water when it's freezing cold, out in the cold months, and still catching bass. Not as often. You know, I might pull in one or two decent sized largemouth in a day on a cold day, and I'll be like, that was a successful day, that was a great day. So another thing that we should probably hit up on is bass move with the seasons. The water gets warmer, the temperature gets warmer outside, it heats up the water around them. That water, once it warms up, the bass are gonna, start to rise. As the temperature gets colder, the bass typically start falling down. And they honestly don't really move around a whole lot in the lakes. Like, they'll still stay in their area. They're not gonna migrate, on a big lake like Toledo Bend, like we got over here, or other larger lakes, they're not gonna move from one side of the lake to the other. They're gonna stay in their general area, but they're just not, it's more so of an up and down movement, not a east to west, north to south movement. Also, another thing, as the water temperature moves up, the bass will also move up to spawn. The reason being for that is because bass are gonna, move up to about 8 feet of water or so for their spawning. And the reason for that is their eggs need sunlight. Bass eggs need sunlight. That's why they move into a more open area when they start to spawn. Those bass eggs need the sunlight, so that way they can hatch and properly go about their business and do what Mother Nature does. Or God. Now, once summer starts hitting good and the water has been warming up, that water temperature rises to around 80 degrees-ish or so. I would say 80s to 84, somewhere around there, somewhere around that temperature range. The bass will will typically start moving towards the deeper water, the cooler water, wherever they can go to get cooled down. Then once the fall hits, that's when they'll start moving back up towards the shallow. Once they hit that shallow water, because that's a better temperature for them. Now, once the mid-hot days of summer are over and the fall hits, they're gonna start moving back up towards the shallows again, because that's the optimal temperature. Like I said before, that's why fishing in the springtime, early summer, and the fall are always usually the best times to catch. So one thing that I have learned over my years of fishing and through lots and lots of reading fish biology books, because I like that kind of stuff and I plan on getting into that once I get out of the Army, is that bass do not like sudden temperature changes. That's why they typically try to stay in one certain area of the lake at a time. They don't like rapidly changing temperatures. Kind of like us, you know, if it's 75 degrees out one day and the next day a cold front hits and it's 45 degrees, well, geez, that doesn't feel great. Bass don't like that either. Oxygen plays a giant role in where the fish will be as well. A lot of the lakes down here, where I'm at in Louisiana, this portion, or especially in Texas especially, the lakes, once you get below 15 feet, they don't start producing a lot of oxygen. So you won't typically find bass deeper than 15 feet in some of those lakes, like in Texas. But you can go up north and find where the oxygen is, you know, prevalent all over the lake, and the bass can be all the way upwards to, you know, 20, 30, 40 feet. I've even seen people pull up bass at 60 feet. It all just depends on what type of oxygen is available in that lake at that time. The oxygen plays a major role because bass need oxygen. Say you are in one of those, you know, Texas lakes where the oxygen doesn't produce very well in the lower regions of the lake. Well, bass typically move over to the shaded areas during those hot summer days. They'll go underneath docks. They'll go where grass is that's producing shade, underneath big fallen logs. That's why you have a lot of success usually catching bass around that type of structure and area. One, because it's, you know, covers, conceals them, they feel safer. And another, because it's creating shade. They want to stay cooler. The water temperatures when they're 85, 90 degrees, that's not pleasant weather for a bass. That's not great temperatures. They don't like that. And just remember, one of the big key takeaways from this is the air temperature outside, while it might be cold to us, if we hit, like I say, a sudden cold snap, you know, that doesn't really play a part with the bass. It's the water temperature itself. So if it's been 80 degrees, you know, for a whole month, that water warmed up, and all of a sudden you get a crazy cold front that comes through and the temperature drops to the 50s and 60s. I promise you, if it's just for a day or two, the bass will not be affected by it because that water temperature is generally staying the same. Now there is one other thing that might affect them in cases like that, because you're wondering, well, shoot, I went out in those cold days and I didn't catch much fish. Now this theory here is not scientifically proven at all. Most people who have studied it, low amount of number, because you can't really find too much conclusive evidence on this, but the barometric pressure. So the barometric pressure, if you talk to most fishermen, and I believe it as well, it changes the bass's habits. Now, once again, there's not hard scientific evidence for this, but if you talk to any seasoned fisherman, I guarantee you they will more than likely tell you, yes, barometric pressure plays a difference. Some might not, but most of the people that I ran across, fishermen that I well respect, say that this plays a difference. So just to explain to you, on barometric pressure is when you either have a high pressure system or a low pressure system that's coming in. A high pressure system is when the air is sinking down to the ground, it's putting more pressure down onto the ground and onto the water, and a lot of fishermen say that that affects fish in a poor manner. So like I said before, not conclusive evidence, but a lot of people seem to think it might affect their swim bladder, so forth and so on, and their feeding habits. Now, a low pressure system, where the air is rising, that usually tends to give more bites from what most people believe. I personally believe that too. When a low pressure system's in, I usually have a better time fishing. It's kind of like when you go fishing right before a thunderstorm. If you never did that, well, one, it might be dangerous, so don't ever go fishing when, you know, lightning is striking around you. But if you go in the few hours before a thunderstorm hits your area, you'll notice that the bass start eating a lot more. At least that's what I've found. So if you haven't tried that out before, try that out. It might work for you. And that's pretty much all that we got today. I just wanted to give a little informational video on how weather affects bass, and hopefully right now we are actually in a high pressure system that just hit the state. So wasn't gonna go out fishing today. I might try out tomorrow, who knows, because the water temperature didn't change too much. We only had about a week of warm weather, so I don't think it changed the water temperature all that great. I don't know, we'll see. Maybe we'll go out tomorrow and catch some fish. All right, well, y'all have a good one. Artillery fishing out.